The scripture chosen for the message this morning is taken from John chapter 13, Jesus washing his disciples' feet. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Then Lord Simon Peter replied, "Not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said, not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Peter said, "No, Lord, you'll never wash my feet." We need to understand that what Jesus did here was absolutely scandalous. Foot washing was a dirty, unpleasant job, usually reserved for servants. And here was Jesus, the Lord and Master of the universe, washing his disciples' feet. That's why Peter objected so strongly. To put it in today's vernacular, this just did not compute for Peter, that someone of Jesus' stature would stoop down to wash his feet. Absolutely scandalous. And then the scandal gets worse, because after Jesus finishes washing his disciples' feet, he looks at them and he says, "Do you understand what I have done for you?" He said, "Now that I have done this for you, washed your feet, you are also to wash one another's feet." You are to wash one another's feet. Now that's not only scandalous, it's downright inconvenient. It's inconvenient. It's unpleasant. It's unnatural. The first time I started to realize about serving others in my own life, I was at a camp for disabled children called Camp Greentop. It's by Camp David, by the way, where the president goes on vacation, right next to Camp David. And it was the first time that I realized that there were other disabled people in the world, which was a wonderful revelation. Because when I was growing up, I thought I was the only disabled person in the whole world. So it was nice to be with another group of other disabled people. And so one of the things we like to do there is to have water balloon fights. And I just enjoyed, you're hearing my confession now, I enjoyed participating in the water balloon fights. And so we had carefully planned that we were going to do this to a particular cabin. We were going to raid them and throw water balloons and flood their cabin and stuff. It was a very elaborate, very exciting plan for me to participate in. And somehow this plan got back to one of our counselors. And he talked to me and he said, "Now, Karl, are you planning to flood this cabin? Am I hearing this correctly?" And I said, "Well, I heard something to that effect. I said, not that I would participate, you understand. I'm still, I tried to back away from it, right? Not to admit that I had helped plan the whole thing." But my counselor said, "Now, you can't do that, Karl." And I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, the people in that cabin, they have muscular dystrophy. And they are very fragile medically. Very fragile medically. And if you frighten them and scare them with this water balloon raid," he said, this could make their disability worse, their situation worse, and it could have dire consequences. So he said, please don't throw those water balloons." So I canceled the water balloon raid on the cabin with my friends who had muscular dystrophy. Because all of a sudden, I had to be concerned about somebody else besides myself. You see, up to that point, my whole life had been about me. It had all been about Karl. And for the first time, I realized that I needed to think about others. I want you to consider Jesus again. Not only did he wash his disciples' feet, he gave his life on a cross for you and for me. That's how much he loves you and me. He loves us unconditionally. He loves us eternally. He loves us no matter what. He loves us warts and all. So much so that he gave his life on a cross. And he did it for you. He knows your name. He knows the number of hairs on your head. He knows all about you. And despite all that, and he knows all about me, and despite all that, he gave his life on a cross. Now that was inconvenient. Don't you think Jesus was inconvenienced? More than inconvenienced. I mean, that's putting it mildly, right? That he would give his life on a cross. The agony and the humiliation that he endured so that we might know his love. But thanks be to God, that's not the end of the story. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. He is all powerful. And his victory is our victory this morning. Which means that we can have new lives. We can live lives where we no longer just serve ourselves. We're not just concerned about ourselves. We're concerned about others. We're concerned about praising God and honoring God with our lives. And what a joyful way to live. I've told you this before. Growing up, people just waited on me hand and foot. They felt so sorry for me. And they would answer to my beck and call. And I've got to tell you, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed